This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program News Analysis, now we bring you a discussion on recent cabinet decisions. The participants are T.R. Ramachandran, political analyst, and Neelab Srivastava, journalist.
The Union Cabinet yesterday held a meeting under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and took a number of policy decisions. Some of the salient points or the salient decisions that the government took was about the laying down of procedure for sale of enemy properties or enemy shares that are in India. The other point that was important vis-a-vis India's relation with Italy was about Cabinet approving the MOU with Italy for training programs on labour employment. The Cabinet also approved the management for 6 airports that are being operated by the Airport Authority of India under the PPP mode, Public-Private Partnership mode. And also the Cabinet approved the filling of Padur Strategic Petroleum Reserve in Karnataka. So these were some of the very important decisions finalized by Union Cabinet yesterday. The most important, I believe, is the Cabinet approving the procedure for mechanism of sale of enemy shares. Now, by enemy shares, we understand that the individuals who belong to Pakistan and China who have left India, India had war with these two countries. So they are categorized as enemy properties. Any subject which is of an enemy firm and does not include a citizen of India is categorized under this enemy definition as such. Apart from the immovable properties, there are about over 6 crore shares in 996 companies of about 20,323 shareholders that are with the custodian of the enemy property of India that sits in Mumbai. The process for selling these shares is to be approved by the alternative mechanism under the chairmanship of the Finance Minister. Committee will comprise of the Ministers of Road Transport and Highway and obviously the Home Minister, because the Home Ministry is the nodal department in this subject. The Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, the DIPAM, which was earlier the Disinvestment Ministry, has been authorized by the Union Cabinet to undertake this sale. These sale proceeds, whatever money that the government earns from this, will be deposited as disinvestment proceeds in the government account maintained by the Ministry of Finance. And the major impact, or the reason that the Union Cabinet has explained, is that this will lead to the monetization of movable enemy property which is lying dormant for decades. Mr. Ramachandran, how do you see this entire cabinet decision where the enemy properties, for the first time, the shares will now be put up for sale and the proceeds will be used for obviously for the works of welfare and other things that the government proposes to do?
Well, I think it's very interesting in the very aspect that they have spoken about it, because something of this kind has not really come up in any significant manner in the last 3 decades or so, or maybe even more. Nevertheless, I think they have spoken about Enemy Property Act of 1968, and I think the sale proceeds are to be deposited as disinvestment proceeds in the government account maintained by the Ministry of Finance. I think the definition of enemy has also been kind of simplified, I think, for the overall purpose of how this money should be utilized. It is evident that these people who had purchased these shares and had subsequently decided to return to their country of origin, or some other problems had arisen with their citizenship. Overall, it is seen that the decision will lead to monetization of enemy shares that had been lying dormant for decades since coming into force in the Enemy Property Act in 1968. The second aspect is that with the amendment of 2017, an enabling legislative provision was created for the disposal of enemy property. Number 3, with the approval now of the procedural mechanism of sale of enemy shares, or enabling framework has been institutionalized for their sale. I think the decision will lead to monetization of movable enemy property lying dormant for decades, and the sale proceeds from this may be used for development and social welfare programs. I think the government overall has realized the futility of, just keeping it under covers or maybe, in books and not moving ahead with it, because it is serving no purpose. And since these people are no longer in this country, or maybe the worst has happened to them, they may have passed away, or whatever the situation, they are, as such, is not an enemy or the enemy who has changed his nationality. In any case, I think we are to a great extent clueless really as to where they are and how they are and whatever their current situation may be. So I think, yes, in the overall analysis, these shares and other things lying dormant, interest increasing on them, the kind of money that could accrue to them.
That the government tells us is about 3,000 crore in these shares. So this can obviously be used for a lot of welfare measures, a lot of things that the government can do with this money.
Of course. And this is phenomenal amount of money. 3,000 crores is not a small amount by any stretch of imagination. So yes, I think this is a welcome move. I'm sure by and large with the present situation, overall financial situation that one is encountering in the country, I wonder if this could also come in handy for all those other purposes.
The second major decision that the cabinet yesterday finalized was about disinvesting its stake in the Dredging Corporation of India, the DCI. The government at present holds about 73.44% of share in this particular Dredging Corporation of India, and the proposal is that this will be sold to a consortium of 4 ports, which is the Visakhapatnam Port Trust, the Paradip Port Trust, the Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust, JNPT as it is known as, and Kandla Port Trust. These are the 4 largest ports of India, and the government's initiative has been to disinvest a lot of stake in various PSUs and organizations that it is holding, and I believe target for the government is about 80,000 crore that it can do by the end of this fiscal. About 15,000 crore has already been done, and this is under the DIPAM, Disinvestment Department, was earlier known as the Disinvestment Ministry. So the government's decision was to do a disinvestment of this DCIL. Ramachandran would want to know what exactly will this lead to.
Well, I think the amount that could accrue to the government is quite substantial. It is not some small little amount that is going to accrue it. So I think the role of the DCIL takes great precedence over the others because it has a proposal for expanding dredging activity in the country as well as potential scope for diversification of ports into third-party dredging. I think in a lot of our ports, the entire activity of the government in the recent few years has been to enlarge the activities at the ports. Somewhere there is serious dredging operation to accommodate larger ships which are not being able to be accommodated there. And they have mentioned in their proposal in the strategic disinvestment of 100% of government's equity in the Dredging Corporation of India that this is also intended to diversify ports into third-party dredging. I think that is very significant where they are trying to involve the ports themselves into undertaking these dredging activities for accommodating more ships with heavy tonnage to able to berth themselves there and unload the goods that are meant for this country. The co-sharing of facilities between the companies as well as the ports shall lead to savings as they have said in the proposal. I think it's a far-reaching proposal by itself because one of the lacunae that has been seen by major exporters to this country is the lack of port facilities in this country. Therefore, I think this will go a long way in ensuring that there is enough space for big ships to berth in this country and offload their products here.
Other decision was related to civil aviation, largely was about leasing of the 6 airports in the country which are currently being operated by the Airports Authority of India, which is the airports are Ahmedabad, Jaipur, Lucknow, Guwahati, Trivandrum and Mangalore. This will be leased out on a PPP model, which is the Public-Private Partnership, and there will be a committee called the Public-Private Partnership Appraisal Committee. This will be headed by the CEO of the Niti Aayog and will have members from the Department of Economic Affairs and the Secretary of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. The entire PPP, a lot of success stories have been written by this particular format where the government goes in tandem with private parties and develops large facilities, public facilities like the airports. The thrust of the government has been on civil aviation, for whether it is the UDAN scheme, whether it is ensuring that more airports are opened in the country, smaller airports go into the... So how do you see this proposal?
I think again very significant because the government's entire effort has been to utilize some of the airports that have remained unutilized even though they were specifically targeted and built for a certain purpose. I think the government on its part has taken the initiative to reactivate these airports. These could come in very handy in terms of an emergency or even in case of a warlike situation in this country. These airports, which are far-flung and which can connect the far areas of the country in a short period of time, has its own pluses and minuses. I think the proposed PPP, that is the private as well as public and private partnership, that this infrastructure projects of these two put together brings efficiency in service delivery, expertise, professionalism, apart from harnessing the needed investments in the public sector. I think the other aspect is that the Airports Authority of India is making a lot of investment for developing greenfield airports, as evidenced in Hyderabad, Bengaluru. Also, airports being managed under the PPP model include Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad and Cochin, and the experience has been a very welcome and positive one. So they want to enlarge this participation between the private and the public sector as much as possible. It has paid dividends. Plus, I think there is also need to enlarge the capacity of our airports because of the high increase in domestic and international air travel to this country. There is a sudden sense of airports being congested because of higher air travel by people within the country, people traveling both within the country and abroad. And I feel they have also noticed a very strong traffic growth at 5 airports which were privatized over a decade ago and has attracted the attention of several international operators and investors. I think the international operators and investors, they have shown their preference for brownfield airport expansion opportunities with having more than 3-4 million passenger capacity. I think in the overall context, therefore, the airport sector may provide an immediate opportunity to attract foreign direct investment by adoption of a PPP. I think that's very significant, and such a measure was overdue.
6 are very vital airports.
These are very vital airports, undoubtedly. There's no doubt about that. Therefore, this is expected to also enhance the revenue of the Airports Authority of India and leading to increased economic development in these areas in terms of job creation and related infrastructure. I think it's a very significant project which cannot be.
Talking about bilateral issues, India now, the cabinet also approved the signing and ratifying of the extradition agreement between India and Morocco. Of late, we have seen a lot of incidents where to take, for example, the recent bank fraud cases, a lot of criminal investigations with regard to India and overseas counterparts being at times jeopardized or getting delayed because we don't have extradition treaties or mutual exchange treaties with so many countries, big or large. The offenders, the fugitives, they run away to several locations. It is very difficult to get them back to the country. So the government has now ratified this criminal protocol between India and Morocco so that any fugitive, any criminal that India wants to get back from this country can be brought back in quick time. How do you see this decision, Mr. Ramachandran?
Honestly, the need for this has arisen more recently, even more than it had been the case in the past. I mean, without really going into those instances, the fact is many people have swindled this country, the various public and private sector banks, mostly public sector banks in a very big way, and have sought to take refuge in countries with whom India does not have an extradition treaty. I think to that extent, this is a very significant decision that has been taken by the Union Cabinet, and it is widely hoped that the MOU will facilitate expansion not just of training and education activities to promote, but also on the methodologies that are involved in these kind of cases where if you have a proper extradition facility, it will be easy for you to approach them. There have been several instances now where India has been in direct touch with the United Kingdom, and there are a few instances where they have shown an inclination, agree to India's request for repatriating the person.
Such treaties are the bedrock of establishing any such contact and then extracting your fugitive from the other country.
Very true. And I think at least in 1 or 2 instances this is beginning to take shape, and the government is very hopeful that a few of them will be repatriated to undergo trial in this country.
Apart from these major decisions that the cabinet approved, there were few others also. We will just mention them very briefly. This is about the cabinet approving a procurement quota for the ITI Limited in procurements that they make from MTNL, BSNL and BBNL. These are state-run telecom departments, agencies. The cabinet also approved the filling of the Padur Strategic Petroleum Reserves, which is in Karnataka. This facility is in an underground rock cavern where the total capacity is understood to be about 2.5 million metric tons. Again, this filling of the reserve will be made on a PPP model, and this is an aim to reduce the budgetary support to the government of India so that it can develop on its own. And India Strategic Petroleum Reserve Limited has constructed and commissioned an underground rock cavern for storage of about 5.33 MMTT of crude oil at these locations. There is also a provision that whenever it is necessary in an emergency condition for India, these reserves can be obtained. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You are listening to a discussion on recent cabinet decisions. The participants were T.R. Ramachandran, political analyst, and Neelab Srivastav, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.